Okay, year 10. So this was our first problem with classification. Looking at external features, sometimes things look like they're closely related, but when we look more closely, we realize that they are not. And also, whales obviously suckle their young. Their young have milk, whereas sharks don't. Interestingly, sharks belong in the same category as fish, although sharks and rays, their cartilage, their bones rather, are made out of cartilage, which is the stuff we have in our ears, rather than bone. Okay, another problem with classification. Well, when we discovered microscopes and we got more sophisticated microscopes, we could see more differences in the microstructures that we haven't seen before. So at the bottom, you get this very, very cool organism called Euglena. And you notice the green bits, it has got chloroplasts in it. So we can see the chloroplasts in the label diagram. It also has a true nucleus, and it's got this flagellum, just like some bacteria have in order to move. And now scientists were looking at this and they were pulling their hair out because is this a plant? Is this an animal? So there was a bit of a biology tug of war. And eventually they decided, you know what, this is too crazy. Let's create a separate kingdom. So this isn't a plant, it isn't an animal. And they decided that it was, in fact, a protist. So important thing to remember, and again, you only need to copy the bit in black, and we'll stop the video for you to do that in a moment. But Euglena has a DNA in a membrane, so it has a true nucleus, just like plants and animals. It has a chloroplast, so that would put it more in the plant category, but it also has an eye spot and a contractile vacuole, like some very simple animals. And that's why they came up with the idea, let's put a new kingdom into the classification list, and let's call that protists. So protists are usually made out of single cells only. That's the bit I want you to remember. Single cells organisms are protists. So pause the video and copy the bit in black, please. Okay, now you might recognize this. I hope you do. This is the structure of a bacteria, and unlike plants and animals and fungi and protists, there is just a clump of DNA. It's actually not found in a lovely nucleus. There's that clump of DNA, and sometimes you'll even get little circular bits of DNA. It's not shown on the diagram. They are called plasmids. Now, what happened was scientists grouped a whole lot of these types of things into the category known as Protoctista, or they called them bacteria. But as technology advanced, and as we could study DNA structure more and analyze the genetics, analyze the DNA, and also understand the biochemistry of the organisms, they suddenly realized that the bacteria weren't all as similar as we had initially thought. So there was a scientist known as Carl Woese, and he found that some members of this group, which they called prokaryote because they didn't have a true nucleus, some of the organisms in the prokaryote group were called Archaea. And when they studied Archaea in more detail, they realized that the biochemistry, the chemical structure of the cell wall and the cell membrane, and some of the DNA made them more closely related to the eukaryotes, the organisms with a true nucleus like plants and fungi and animals. And so they realized they needed a new classification system, and Carl Woese replaced the 5-kingdom system with the 3-domain system. Right, now, don't copy this down for the moment, but let's have a look at some example of Archaea. So Archaea, they are found very often in very extreme conditions, such as the edge of volcanoes, in swamps, in very, very salty water, but actually there's a lot of Archaea in seawater. And initially people thought Archaea was simply found in very extreme conditions, and they called them extremophiles, but they also found in the gut of cows and the gut of termites to help them break down wood. So there's a lot more around them than we initially thought. Now, you have written down the first two, or the first point. What I would like you to write down is these 3 bullet points. So, with new discoveries and advanced technology, with microscopes and our understanding of biochemistry and genetics, it has advanced our understanding of living organisms. This has led to a change from the 5-kingdom system to the 3-domain classification system. And this reflects the nature of science. So science continues changing as we make new discoveries. That's the wonderful thing about science. Pause the video and make sure you copy these 3 bullet points neatly into your book. Okay, so finally, we're going to have a look at this 3-domain system. So from this diagram, you can see the 3 domains are bacteria, Archaea, and eukarya. Okay, so eukarya are the ones that have a true nucleus. Bacteria and Archaea don't have a true nucleus. But we see that in the eukarya, they've now combined the protists, the unicellular organisms, plants, fungi, and animals. And this diagram shows how far back in time these go. So they all had a common ancestor. And we can see over here that actually the Archaea are more closely related to the eukarya, the organisms with a true nucleus. I would like you to pause the video and very neatly in your book copy out this slide. Okay, Year 10s, once you are done, these are the revision card questions you need to have in the back of your book using the notes we've covered this lesson in order to revise what we have learned. Okay, I'm just going to help you with the first one. I'm just going to talk you through them quickly, just in case you have fallen off the bus. So what's the difference between a eukaryote and a prokaryote? A eukaryote has a nucleus with DNA in it. A prokaryote just has a clump of DNA. The subdivisions of a kingdom, remember, keep pond clean or frog gets sick. So work it out from there. Kingdom, phylum, keep pond clean, class, order, or pond, keep pond clean, or order, family, frog, gets, genus, sick, species. Okay, that always helps me. Explain why there's been a change from a 5-kingdom to a 3-domain classification system. So you'll explain how with advance in technology and with our understanding of genetics and biochemistry, we have a better understanding and we can see how different organisms are more closely related to each other. And then draw the 3-domain system in detail. So you just copy on your revision card the last slide we did. So you've got until the end of the lesson to work on this. In silence, please. I want you to really focus and get this into your head. Very well done.